As we were upgrading our lifestyle, my wife and I, we sat down. It was a Friday night. All right, so the income is X, our expenses are Y, and we're not making a dent in any of our personal debt, and we're not even getting ahead, let alone paying anything off. It just clicked. As our income continues to go up, we cannot continue to upgrade our lives. That was a very beginning part of our journey in understanding how money works.
You're getting a paycheck every month, but today you're not a mechanical engineer.
As I'm working, I'm also dabbling, so to speak, into doing syndications.
So at some point you stopped working and stopped getting that paycheck and you went full-time into this.
I started this journey with syndication, saying to myself, I'm going to be the baddest, the biggest syndicator. I'm going to raise all the money myself. I'm going to, manage these assets myself. I'm going to find these deals myself, right? Again, that was the stupid side of me of thinking that this is a one-person show. This is probably not it.
So how did you pivot from that?
In life, there's a blueprint for everything. There's no need to start over. Hear from industry leaders, those at the top of their fitness journey, and real estate gurus. They tell you exactly how they did it. All you have to do is listen, learn, and execute. This is The Blueprint with Brad Rice.
All right, we're back for another edition of The Blueprint. Today, I have got somebody that's bringing a whole different view of things for you guys to learn about, and super excited about it. This is somebody who is in the creator group that I'm in with Rich Summers. And so that's how we met. And he had me on his podcast not too long ago. So we're returning the favor here. I want to welcome Sam Khari. And, Sam, he has a company he founded called Afto Capital. They invest in multifamily. And he does syndications as well. So we had somebody on here a few weeks ago that talked about syndications. She was an attorney that did that. And we're going to get into how you put together your syndications and how that works. But this is for acquiring B and C type properties, multifamily, right?
That's right.
Okay, very good. Sam grew up in Canada, which is probably why he likes a little bit of hockey in his life. But he studied mechanical engineering and ultimately decided he didn't want to be part of the rat race and just worked to, retire at age 65. So in 2018, Sam learned about real estate and syndications and went all in. So we're going to find out about that path and the blueprint that he created to be the success you've had today. He also has a book called The Real Investment Solution that talks about all this. Sam, welcome to the pod.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
that's great.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to first talk about that transition where you studied mechanical engineering, and how did you wind up choosing that, and then you were working in that field for a while, and then that trigger that you're like, because there's probably a lot of people out there that studied something, thought they wanted to do it, and maybe just aren't completely happy in their lives, but they get that paycheck every week and they get trapped.
That's right.
And so I'd really like you to kind of explain how that all happened.
Sure. So growing up, obviously in Canada, we were also immigrants to Canada. My parents brought myself, my older brother, my younger sister, brought us to Canada. I was the age of 13. And the whole idea was you're going to get a professional degree just because that's the safest way for you to study, get a job, and work until retirement, because that's the safest thing to do, right?
And that's honestly most immigrant families.
100%.
That's the expectation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it was between being a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. And my dad was an engineer, and my mom was a registered nurse. So ultimately, it had to be one of those professions, just because if you're not doing that, what else are you doing with your life?
And you weren't going the Fokker direction.
That's right.
Okay.
So ended up picking. I remember growing up as a joke. I told my dad it wasn't a joke to me, but it ended up being a joke to them, just because I wanted to be a pilot. And I said, this is probably at the age of like 14 or 15. I was like, people are asking me, what do you want to do as a career? It's like, I want to be a pilot. It sounded so amazing to me. It's like you get to fly these amazing planes, go to different places. That's the thing I wanted to do. But guess what? That did not sit well with my parents, especially my dad. And before you know it, I was on my path to getting my engineering degree. Dad also had an engineering degree in mechanical engineering, and that's what I ended up choosing. And through struggles, going through university, college in Canada, ended up getting my engineering degree, and that was it.
Can you can we pause there for a moment, and can you explain what does a mechanical engineer do?
So you can do a lot of things, and this is I found this out through not before I went to school, but more so afterwards. In that, it is a great profession. Meaning, just being an engineer or just a professional, it opens a lot of doors. Being an engineer, it helps you. What they teach you at school is a little different than what real life scenario is. What I gathered from going to school and what really ended up happening for me was not only did it open doors for me just because I had that engineering degree on a piece of paper that people actually cared for. Secondly, what it did for me especially was it helped me think differently. And what I mean by that is it wasn't more of a I'm going to add two numbers together to come up with an answer, but it just helped me try to solve for problems that were in front of me.
Critical thinking.
100%.
Yeah.
To me, that was the biggest thing. That was the biggest unknown that I didn't know at the time going through school, just because through doing problem solving, whether it's in school or outside of school, it just helped me think differently. It just helped me pull in information that I didn't necessarily have and didn't think I needed, but be able to make a more informed decision in a grand scheme of things, right? I mean, yeah, you've got a problem ahead of you, in front of you, but just being able to come up with solutions that someone may or may not be able to come up with, just a way of thinking. It really helped me come up with what I was really good at, and
Okay.
I do have to give a lot of credit to going through school, especially becoming a mechanical engineer.
So with but with that as your experience and being able to apply that in business, there are different things you can do with that degree.
For sure.
You chose to be in construction.
So, oddly enough, I graduated in 2009, and that was, as you know, economy wasn't so hot. And one day, my friends and I, we were still in college, and we decided to go to the career fair.
Mm-hmm.
Walked in, the very first booth in front of me was this company called Kiewit Construction. At the time, I had no idea who they were, and walked up to the booth, and the lady that greeted me, we just had this huge connection. I walked out of there. She almost guaranteed me an interview. Not only that, we had a great connection, and we on a personal level, both professional as well as personal. I basically just walked into that career fair, met with that one company, and walked right out, not thinking anything about it. Fast tracked, and basically that one interaction, I got the job through that one interaction. Didn't have to apply to any other jobs. Didn't have to meet with anybody else. And at the time I was just being lazy. It wasn't because I was confident. It was just, all right, I don't want to be here. I want to go do my studies. I need to go do other stuff. Why am I going to this career fair? I don't care to do any of this stuff. I'm just going to go meet. And the first interaction was the one that actually stuck with me. I was like, okay, I got what I wanted out of this. I'm out of here. But lucky enough, that was the only time. All of my friends around me didn't get a job, ended up going back to school to get their graduate degrees, and took a completely different path. Whereas I, through just by virtue of being lazy or lucky, whatever you want to call it, I ended up getting an amazing job with this amazing construction company who does just incredible work. If your listeners are interested, look them up. They do amazing work through
big
North
company.
America. Huge.
Yeah, a lot of government jobs.
That's right.
And just big.
So
big
as an engineer, that company was looking for engineers, not for them to design things for them, but they just knew that engineers, generally speaking, they're good problem solvers.
Yeah.
And we're also able to apply our technical knowledge to way of constructing things, and it's a good mix. I mean, having engineers in construction is fantastic. And
So you're at this job. You're getting paid well, I assume. and you got a paycheck every month, and you start building a life around that, right? And you get your car payment, and maybe you buy your first house.
Comes the car, right?
Yep.
You get that first car. You get, and then that was kind of around the time I was moving down here to the U.S. with my wife, and now we're looking at, buying a second car, upgrading our rental house at the time, getting a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom,
Yeah.
and just continuing to go up in our lifestyle, and not even thinking about all the student debt that we've accumulated,
Yeah.
all the as the paycheck number goes up and the life continues
Lifestyle
to upgrade.
does. You get
right?
caught in the proverbial rat race.
100%,
right?
100%.
Your paycheck, and you're chasing your lifestyle.
That's right.
So how do you then get introduced to real estate
Yeah.
and then make that transition? Was it immediate? Did you pull the plug?
Sure.
Was it over a period of time? Did you plan it? I mean, you're analytical. So very curious how you made that transition from somebody who's going to school for a career, gets a job in that career, gets a life started in that career, and then ultimately makes a transition.
Let me just take a quick step back, just because this is in my mind very important in what actually happened when I got into real estate. As we were upgrading our lifestyle, my wife and I, I haven't told this story to many people, but there was a time where we sat down. It was a Friday night. Our house was dark. This is beautiful 2-bedroom apartment that we upgraded to. The car payments, the student loan payments and everything else. And, you sit there, and it was Friday night, lights are, off, and we're just talking, right? And it's one of those things that you realize, you're like, all right, so the income is X, our expenses are Y, and we're not making a dent in any of our personal debt, and we're not even getting ahead, let alone paying anything off. And it just clicked in that, all right, this needs to stop. Meaning, as our income continues to go up, we cannot continue to upgrade our lives, and that stuck with us. And that was the very beginning part of our journey in understanding how money works and how debt works and how finances work. Just because before then it was like, you get a new job, you get a higher pay, whether it's a 2% raise, 5% raise, or just a completely different job, and you just upgrade your life.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do, because you get a nicer car, you get nicer clothes, you go out to eat a lot more, right? But that had to stop. That was the immediate thing that we, luckily we got to do before we even got introduced to real estate or anything else for that matter. So that was a big pivotal moment in our lives, in that understanding what finances look like and how we were going down the wrong path. Kind of stopped the bleeding, so to speak, right? We had to do that. Otherwise, without it, we would not have been where we are today. Now, to answer your question, between that time and when we got into real estate, we wanted to get ahead. Not only did we want to pay down our debt, but we also wanted to get ahead in life. Hired financial advisors, hired other professionals to help us. Through this journey, I mean, we learned a lot about what good looks like and what what not so good looks like, and we ended up firing every single one, just because the advice that they were giving us was not consistent or in line with what we wanted in life. And what I mean by that is, one of the first things, I don't know if you've gone through the process, one of the first things they want to do, they want to sign you up with a life insurance policy. Fair enough. I mean, that's one of the more important things that you need to have. But that it occurred to us that most of these advisors are very much incentivized to sell you their product and collect fees, maybe on the product or otherwise. And again, that just was not aligned with what we were trying to do. We were looking for advice on how to get ahead in life. And one of the advice that they gave us was, your Comcast Xfinity bill, your internet bill, your TV bill, you need to cut cable. So cutting $50 a month, to me, is not getting ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, that's baseline. Yes, everybody needs to do that. If you're trying to get ahead, yes, that's one of the first things. But that's not an advice I want to hear from a financial advisor. That's like the best piece of advice you can give me, right? So again, that just through the process of doing and going through their journey, we learned quite a bit. And it just nothing stuck, nothing aligned with what we were trying to do. And by any means, we're not trying to fast track anything, but it just didn't end up being what we wanted to.
So what did you do? You fired everybody.
Fired everybody and continued to educate ourselves.
Okay.
And
Online, YouTube.
There's books, and luckily at my job, the last job I held here in California, I met a few folks, one in particular that really helped open my eyes to investing, and more specifically real estate investing.
Yep.
Obviously, it starts with the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and listening to podcasts and going to events, which was huge for me, meeting different folks and learning as to how people operate and what are some of the things that they invest in.
Yeah.
And being able to pick and choose what works for us and what doesn't, what's our risk tolerance, what's our threshold that we're looking for, and generally what's our time horizon as to what we're trying to do. So that's kind of
okay.
what it was.
So just to, again, we've got this picture for people that are listening to this. You're getting a paycheck every month. You decide, hey, we got to control this. We keep upgrading our lifestyle. Let's give ourselves some gap ability to save money. Let's cut some expenses. We started studying, investing
100%.
and doing something that's going to be more exponential in return. You get introduced to real estate. But today you're not a mechanical engineer.
That's right.
And so at some point you stopped working and stopped getting that paycheck and you went full-time into this. Give us that period of time. Like literally what happened. Give us the blueprint for somebody who wants to do the same thing. How did you stop working? Was it a transition thing over a period of time? Did you make a decision but give yourself 90 days? Like what was that transition to get from getting that paycheck to being self-employed?
So my thoughts on that is, and what I followed is I would not necessarily subscribe that for everybody, just because I did things a little different. And as I was learning and was going through my journey of understanding real estate, we invested into real estate. Some did well, some did not.
Invested in what? Single
In real
family?
estate, single family. So we started with the turnkey single family opportunities in the Midwest. Great cash flow, not much appreciation and things like that. So learned about the different aspects of real estate. As we're going,
Can I just a little bit more detail there, because again, you started investing in real estate, but it's nice to say that. But then the actual practicality of doing it. Were you online, looking at properties online, looking at Zillow? And then were you buying this, coming up with a down payment, buying it non-owner occupied? Were you fixing it up and selling it? Were you keeping it as a rental? What were you doing?
So we met a turnkey operator in California where we live, near our area, where there were three partners. Two of the partners were in the Bay Area, where they were looking for investors like myself, who were looking to invest the California money into real estate.
Okay.
And they also had a partner in the Midwest who was sourcing the properties and basically just getting a turnkey ready for folks like myself to get in. So the numbers, I'll even break down the numbers for you. $65,000 purchase. This is in 2018. $65,000 purchase, single family residence, $900 a month in rent. So it well meets the 1% rule. And it was a Section 8 property where 90% was paid by the government.
Mm-hmm.
So again, 90% guaranteed money going in. So that property, after all expenses paid, we were probably anywhere from $400 to $600 a month in cash flow. Amazing at the time. I mean, it's like you just put in $65,000 of cash, and that was the caveat is these things were not being, you can finance them just because. It was worth $40,000. You're buying at $65,000 at a premium just because it's turnkey. You got a tenant in there.
Yeah, and to explain what turnkey means is they acquired these properties, they did the work to them and then flipped them.
Correct.
Right?
That's exactly right.
They were
exactly
rehabs that they did,
exactly
which is a great strategy, right?
I think it's
you didn't
fantastic
have
for
to do
somebody
any
that
of that.
started.
This is
100%.
somewhere in another state. You're not going to do that. You don't know
Absolutely.
people there. You don't know the permitting
Absolutely.
process. You don't know contractors. So
100%.
turnkey. They helped you to get the renters in as well and did the property management?
Everything was turnkey, and they actually ended up staying on for at least a year as the property manager. So they basically essentially guaranteed, so to speak, right, the tenants that they put in, right? Fantastic. I mean, just kind of lowers the risk for the investors to get in.
Good way
And
to get started.
It's fantastic to get started. Again, for those that don't understand, is what are you looking to get out of these, right? So at the time for us, we were putting the money in and we were getting cash flow, which was great. In hindsight, what we didn't realize was that the property is not worth what we paid for, right? So again, these are the lessons that you learn as you invest, and you don't necessarily learn every single aspect as you're studying and listening to podcasts, right? So the property is not worth what you paid for, but you're getting cash flow. Fantastic. It's a home run. We're going to deal with it. Great. So that was the very first property that we invested in. And the goal was we were going to save up enough money through our, cutting expenses and not upgrading our lives and things like that. So we can do one of these every single year for the next 10 years, right? So 65,000, let's say there's some inflation. Next year is 70,000, 75,000, so on and so forth. We're going to save enough money to buy one of these every single year for the next 10 years. So in 10 years, guess how much money we're going to cash flow, right? I mean, obviously we didn't even take into account that we could refinance.
Sure.
Hopefully the property goes up. But bottom line, we're going to be $5,000 a month now because we have 10 of these times $500 a month. That's $5,000 of free cash flow in our pocket.
Yeah.
Again, amazing idea. And this is fantastic, right? That's on a 10-year period. And that's the path we got on. At some point, we realized that's not a good way to scale, because not only is $5,000 a month doesn't cover our expenses, especially living in California, right? But that's 10 years from now, right?
Inflation.
But it's also, that's exactly right. But it's also, all right, that still requires us to continue to work for the next 20 to 30 years. Again, that's one of those things that clicks, right? Is even though that's great, that the current thinking is great, but what does the future look like? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? If the goal is for us to not have to work for this money, this is probably not it.
So how did you pivot from that?
I'd say if you're considering joining the AmeriFund team, it's a really good idea.
We as processors at AmeriFund Home Loans support the loan officers in every aspect of the loan once it comes into processing, because we want them out there marketing themselves and originating more loans and supporting more borrowers.
Competitive commission plans are a given, and powerful technology is expected. But what truly sets us apart is our culture. We've built a solid support system for our loan officers.
If you're interested in joining the AmeriFund team, go to amerifund.com/careers.
So then the idea is like, all right, how do we make this a little bit quicker? How do we scale a little bit more, right? And again, through the same network that we had, we got introduced to investing as a passive investor, as a limited partner in an apartment complex, a 150-unit apartment complex in Georgia. Again, you put in your money and you become a limited partner, as you know, become a passive investor, where a syndicator or a general partner, an operator essentially, gets a property under contract. They do the due diligence. They line up the financing and everything else. But instead of putting in their own money, they'll raise the capital, the equity that they need to buy this property. That's where we came in.
Yeah.
We were the pool of investors that put in our money, and in return, we were at the 7% pref at the time, and again, that was one of the properties that we went in. I don't want to say blindly, but again, it was like, I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the details of what you're talking about, but I'm in.
Okay.
And it was amazing for us just because, again, I only learn by doing. I'm not very good at reading something and comprehending and actually being able to put it in action. Again, going back to being an engineer, I got decent grades at school, but I learned more from doing stuff outside of school than I did while I was in
School
college.
of Hard Knocks.
100%,
Yeah.
right? So being a limited partner in a syndication kind of opened my eyes as to, all right, so I'm on this side of the fence where I'm putting in the capital and somebody else is doing the work and they're benefiting. And what really got me was their acquisition fee at the beginning was, the 3%, right? So I was like, all right, again, this is my dumb self thinking. This guy did no work. In my mind, this guy did no work because this property just landed on his lap.
Yeah.
He did no work whatsoever. He just went around and asked for some money, right? So that was my thinking at the time. This person did zero work and is getting 3% right off the bat as soon as we close on this deal. Okay, so that kind of stayed with me, right? It's one of those things that's like, all right, if he can do it, why can't I, right?
Sure.
It's like, all right, so that's the goal to get to, is like, now I need to go from being a passive investor, now I need to be a general partner where I am collecting all these fees, I am getting all these management fees, and I am doing, I'm going to go be the biggest and baddest syndicator alive, because that's the way to do it. I can use other people's money to, build myself a portfolio, which, again, that is generally how it works. But, the stupid part of me is like, oh, this is easy.
Yeah.
Right? Anybody can do it.
Of course, because you hadn't done it yet.
100%.
So you're still working. You're still getting a paycheck. Now you invest in this syndication,
Yep.
and you're like, wait a minute, maybe I can do that.
Yep.
So was that the catalyst to then start doing it before you left your job?
100%. So that was my way of, all right, I'm going to try my hand on becoming a general partner. So I met with sponsors and, built that trust with a few folks that I thought, locally and otherwise, that I wanted to do deals with. Meaning, if I'm going to be partners with somebody on a syndication, these are the folks that I wanted to work with. They've got the experience, they've got the knowledge, and I want to be able to learn from somebody that's done this before, because I know what I know, and I know that there's a lot I don't know.
Yeah.
Therefore, and I take the fact that I'm using other people's money, and I take that very seriously. And I wish a lot of people did, but to me, that's serious business. That's not something that you take lightly. So I wanted to make sure that the deals that we're getting into are solid enough by way of someone that's done this before, so that I could partner with them and learn from them, as well as do great deals. So as I'm working, I'm also dabbling, so to speak, into doing syndications, and the more traction I got, then I realized that I'm not. I'm being stretched thin, meaning I'm doing a really crappy job at both, right? I was like, I'm not paying attention at work.
Yeah.
I'm not paying attention to fully paying attention to growing this syndication thing that I set out to do. And in my mind, as we were going through our journey, I said, by the age of 40, I'm going to be retired. And to me, the retire thing was that I'm just going to sit at home, go to the beach every single day, drop my kids off at school, like just hang out with them all day. And it's like, which we'll get to at some point in that also was kind of a dumb idea. But 40, being the age of 40, that was my cutoff, right?
Yeah.
Whether I had made it or not. So it just turned out to be that when I did turn 40, I was in this pivotal moment in my career where I wasn't doing a good job at either one. Mm-hmm. I wasn't doing a good job on my work, and I wasn't doing a good job at focusing on real estate and trying to grow this thing and take it to where I needed to go. So it's like, Monday morning, I was on my way to the office. This is still when we were remote. On the way to the office, I called my wife. I said, I'm going to put in my notice. And that was it. That was a Monday morning phone call at 7:30 in the morning. I vividly remember it. Just silence on the other side of the phone. And she said, okay, we got this.
Great.
And that was it. And I hung up the phone, drove straight to work. And one of the first things I did, I pulled my boss aside. I was like, this is my 2 weeks notice. And never looked back. And it was like,
so it wasn't that you were really financially ready, but you realized you had done enough work in establishing this syndication and being the general partner that you saw you could make money at it, and you knew you weren't going to do that in the slow path of doing both at the same time.
And that's what I mean, that I would not prescribe this for everybody, is because I wasn't 100% there, right?
But you did have the knowledge. You had built up some knowledge, and you knew you could do it, and
That's
you
exactly
knew you had
right.
to give it the time. And your wife was still working, so
That's
you had
exactly
some
right.
income.
Yeah.
So that was really the thing to get. Like, if you both would have quit at the same time, maybe that would have been.
That's exactly right. I mean, at some point, it's in my mind, it's, if I'm not doing this now, I'm never going to do it. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, whether it's the age of 40, the number 40, or just that time in my career.
Well, let that also be a lesson to people. Like, how old are you now?
42.
42.
Yep.
So this is a couple of years ago.
Yep.
You were getting involved. There's people like this today that are listening to this podcast that are saying to themselves, look, I have a glimpse of what being an investor in real estate can be, or having some part of my income from real estate, but I still have this job, and they might think it's too late. And so it's not too late. It's never too late.
That's right.
And here you are. Now you are full time.
That's right.
In real estate. So let's talk about Afto Capital, how that was established. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, so Afto was established. That was kind of our company under which we we did real estate. So a lot of our assets kind of roll up under Afto. But as you know, every deal is a little different, right? I mean, we I mostly focus on the capital side as well as doing asset management, and I've actually done less and less syndication ever since I left, just because I'm focusing a lot more on buying assets for that, meet our, my family's needs than kind of being an active real estate investor at this point. So that's if I were to describe syndication in a couple different things, you either source the deal, you manage the deal, you sign on the loan docs, or you raise capital. I mean, those are some of the four biggest things that you could generally do. Obviously, you should wear multiple hats, just because it takes a lot of effort. But generally, I'm on the capital as well as the asset management side.
Okay, got it. So you're raising capital.
Correct.
Got it.
That's correct.
This is for multifamily.
Multifamily, we did try self-storage, especially in the Bay Area. It was quite difficult, and that was one of the first things that I did when I left my job, in the middle of COVID, was met with high prices. Short story, deals didn't make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we could not make deals work for us. Still on the table, still underwriting, still looking at deals. So that's my kind of focus in multifamily as well as self-storage. Those are my assets that I really like. Obviously self-storage more so in California, but multifamily, it would be,
So your self-storage specifically in California, where do you have facilities?
We don't have active facilities, but we've invested in things in California, in the Bay Area, especially.
Yeah. I mean, look, self-storage, we could talk about this for a minute, because self-storage is kind of that thing that is a great asset to have one. But if you're not acquiring land that's zoned for it and building it in an area that you've done the research and you know that there's a need for it, it's super difficult to acquire.
Huge.
Because they are cash cows. And I think we're finally getting to the point where owners of self-storage that have had them for decades are getting a little bit older and looking to finally cash out of them. But for years and years and years, it's been a difficult asset to acquire because nobody sells them.
Yeah. No, that's right.
But it does seem like that's an asset class that's opening up. Would you agree?
I would. I haven't seen too many on our side that we've had access to, so I will caveat that. But that's generally the theme, right? It's exactly that. Like even the folks that I talk to on the professional side, it is a cash cow, and it's the price has to be really good for somebody to make a move on. All right, I'll sell it to you, or maybe they're just really tired of it, right? But
I think that's the latter is the case. I have an account with Crexy, and of course the LoopNet and all that. But Crexy, I have my account set to look for self-storage, not just in California, Texas, other places.
Right.
And I will say that the notifications have picked up quite a bit in the last 6 months.
I am seeing, I do have to agree with that. Again, it's hard for me to underwrite every single one, so I've kind of like narrowed my search to areas that I think we can operate, right? So, but I still get notifications across the U.S. just every single day. Right?
Yeah,
it
seems to be picking up a bit.
I would agree with that.
Okay,
I would agree.
Right on. Okay, so multifamily, self-storage. How much do you have in the assets under management today?
So I've actually, as part of me transitioning out of being an active general partner, we're down to about 230 units. So we've kind of like reduced that number as we've gotten out, whether sold the properties or otherwise. But yeah, the focus is shifting again. It's one of those things that I learned I did. I am now okay with being more of a passive investor in multifamily space than being active, just because the focus is shifting a little bit into real estate is always going to be there for me, whether I'm active or otherwise. It's one of those things that even the cash that comes in, it's going to end up in some of these real assets, including real estate, multifamily, self-storage. And, I'm trying to shift my focus to buying businesses that can produce that cash flow, because then that cash flow can actually end up in real estate.
Got it.
Again, I am not one. I started this journey with syndication, saying to myself, I'm going to be the baddest, the biggest syndicator. I'm going to raise all the money myself. I'm going to, manage these assets myself. I'm going to find these deals myself, right? Again, that was the stupid side of me of thinking that this is a one-person show. Mm-hmm. Now I know how much work it takes and what are some of the hurdles that you need to go through, and some of the challenges along the way. There are people that are 10 times more experienced than I am that I trust with my money. I'm completely okay being a passive investor in certain assets, knowing that the person that I'm putting money with is going to be in good hands.
Got it. So explain the difference between somebody in real estate being a passive investor and somebody being an active investor.
My advice for someone selling their home: number 1, do it yourself and save. Number 2, use HomePie.
HomePie makes it easy to buy or sell without an agent. I can list a home in minutes and start receiving offers right away from buyers.
When we discovered that we didn't have to lose $40,000 in agent commission just to upsize to a larger home, it was an obvious choice.
List your home for free at homepie.com. Keep your piece of the pie.
So passive investor, I mean, it's loosely as a limited partner in a syndication, right? It's someone that basically puts in the money and does none of the work. I mean, that's the simplest way I could put it.
Yep.
Is someone like a professional, whether you're a doctor, doctor, lawyer, engineer, you make a bunch of money, and you want to put that money to work, and you have some disposable income that you want to diversify, or you've been in the stock market, now you're wanting to get some into private deals. Syndication is obviously private deals.
Yep.
And that's really what it's
active
for, right? And the active side is, someone that actively sources the deal. And like I said, the 4 major pillars that I talk about: you're sourcing the deal, you're managing the deal, you're putting your name on the loan. That's a big one that not many people talk about. Or you're raising capital, but you're actively engaged and involved in managing this property or this asset. Yep. That's the biggest difference. You may or may not have your own capital into the deal as an active investor. Again, as on the passive side, I will look for the general partnership team, or the active team, call it. I will require them to have some capital into the deal. It's not always necessary. If you think about it, they're putting in time, looking for deals. They're not getting paid up front or before doing the deal, so they require that deal to close. But on the flip side, they will get paid on whether it's the exit, or whether you're refinancing the company or refinancing the property, or whether you're even getting management fee as you're managing the property. Right. So those are the ways that they do get paid. So it's kind of deferred payment for them, whereas the limited partners, they also sit higher on the capital stack, generally just behind the senior debt a lot of times.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so now you've kind of taken a different shift. You've moved out of that active investing, still being a passive investor, still have money in real estate, but now you're acquiring businesses. What kind of businesses? What size?
It's interesting because during the, I think you and I talked about this during our podcast, is how slow real estate got in the last couple of years, and the volume was down significantly as a result of obviously many things, including the interest rates. But that kind of timeline aligned with me leaving my job. So as I left my job, I was basically bored for a year to a year and a half, just banging my head against the wall, trying to underwrite deals, meeting new people, just going to different parts of the U.S., trying to see what would be a good market for us to be in, and so on and so forth. So for a good year and a half, I was just like, this is not what I signed up for. And then I shifted my focus to, all right, so if I'm again, going back to like, what is the end goal? If I know that all of our money is going to end up in real estate and that's going to continue to grow as a safe way for us to continue build wealth, something needs to feed it. Whether I'm an active investor or if I'm going to be a limited partner or a passive investor, one of the best ways to do it is just generate cash flow to be able to put that into deals. My wife and I have obviously like some disposable income, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to build other machines that we could then grow, and which generates income. Then all that income and cash flow ends up in these other assets or investments, I call them, to build our empire for the future. So the goal is I'm buying small businesses in the home service industry, we started with a junk removal company, a junk removal industry, just because I met a partner of mine through one of my coaching programs. He's a stud. He's amazing at what he does. Partnered with him. We're buying smaller companies in California, and the goal is we're going to roll everything up, and essentially they're going to continue to produce cash flow. They're going to be big enough that we're going to be able to approach PE firms or other buyers at some point. And not only that, my personal goal, is to be able to duplicate this and do it for other industries as well. Whereas now you've got multiple streams of income that's going to come in. It's generally, you can multiply it in many industries, but so that's the goal. So we're buying businesses that are, less than $1 million. Okay. But generally speaking, what I'm looking for is specific things. Obviously, we have our numbers that we look at, but they need to be in business for at least 3 to 5 years. They need to have good bookkeeping or good records of their financials. We've run into that situation before, and I'm looking for are they managed well, and is there an opportunity for us to come in and add value to those businesses? Just because if they're running at high capacity and if there's nothing for me to do when I come in, it's not money well spent. I'm looking for opportunities where we can come in and take their whether it's their gross or their bottom line, we could add to it by way of whether it's automating or just plugging into our existing systems, and that's really where we add value.
All right. So in the home service space, it was one of these called Top Junk. Is that the one you were talking about?
Yep.
Less than $1 million in total revenue. What are you paying for these? What's your formula to decide how to pay for these? Are you a tech investor looking to shape the future of real estate? HomePie is the #1 for sale by owner marketplace, and we are revolutionizing the way homes are bought and sold. I'd love to hear from you. Just email invest@homepie.com and let's chat. Now back to the show.
So it's interesting because, looking at the end goal, we're probably looking at 5 to 7 or 8x of EBITDA.
At the end. On your exit.
But then working backwards, it doesn't quite turn out to be that way, just because when you're buying smaller businesses, their EBITDA is much, much smaller than that. When you're talking smaller, less than $1 million businesses. So we do end up coming up with something, whereas we're basically valuing their assets based on what they have. So it's more of an asset purchase as opposed to kind of buying the business, just because we also know that we're plugging it into our world. So, we're buying.
So when you say it's an asset business, you said home services, which of course some of those may have assets. For example, a junk removal may have some trucks.
Yep, that's right.
But there's a lot of home services that don't have any assets. You're not looking at those.
No. So, for example, we're not looking at cleaning, home cleaning
or inspections,
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're not quite there yet. When I talk about assets, even the assets of buying their customer list, their website, because as you know, having Google reviews and having good SEO and things like that, those are valuable. And in our world, obviously the trucks have some value as well. So that's kind of generally what we look for. a lot of times it turns out to be, it's probably close to, I would say, if I were to give it a number or a formula, I would say it's probably 1x revenue, right?
Top line revenue.
Top line revenue.
Okay.
That's correct. So that's kind of like, that's where the purchase prices hover, depending on how well they keep their books and so on and so forth,
Okay.
right? Obviously, there's discounts to be applied, based on what we find.
And so how many of these have you acquired so far?
So we are up to 2 locations now. We started this thing about 6 months ago, and we've got 2 more in the works to be closed in the next 8 weeks. or
Okay.
so.
It's exciting. Are you using SBA financing?
So I did for the first one. Again, learned a lot. So now we're in the world of, it's a 10-year loan at 11%, and again, the idea of only putting down 10% for a business, it's amazing, right? Everybody should be doing it, right? But at the same time, it's, again, where are you trying to go with this thing? Do you have the capital to put in? Do you have, are you okay with not having the cash flow immediately, right? As you grow this business and so on and so forth. So the future ones, what we're looking at is either putting down more down payment or just maybe even using our own capital and be able to kind of cash out, further down the line when we do have the bottom line to be able to kind of, get better financing.
Okay. Any of these seller carry?
They have not. We've gotten close, but they have not been able to, because a lot of them are single location, and they are just at a point where they can't see how this thing could be better than they've made it.
So then
right?
they don't want the risk.
They don't want the risk of, in a year you're going to come back to me and you're going to put it back on me. So we're kind of at that stage right now.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that you have this saying that you say, I want you to kind of explain what it means, that wealth is passed down through knowledge, not assets. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I'm trying to practice this quite a lot with my kids, especially just because, ever since they were, my son was like 3-4 years old, I gave him 2 Ziploc bags. And when we give them money, it's 80% goes into your investment and 20% goes through. And over time, now instead of having having a Ziploc, he's got a spreadsheet where he is now able to see how it has been able to grow and accumulate over the years, right? So what I would like is, I can only teach him so much. And what I mean by that is my knowledge is limited as much as I know and what I'm going to learn from people around me. But I want my kids or those around us to know their, as much as they can so that they can make informed decisions for themselves. So what I tell my kids is, I'm going to teach you what I know, but I'm going to also put you in touch with people that, that I learned from, because I want you to learn directly from them and make up your own mind. If you want to go to school and you want to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer, do that.
So be it.
Right? So be it. But know that when it comes to finances and the things that we went through, I want you to know the path that we took and what is possible and be able to make your own decision. And it's not me dictating what they should do. It's me giving them the knowledge to be able to make informed decision. To me, decision making based on information you have, the good information you have is so much more powerful than if somebody tells me to do something and I go and do it. That is not the right approach. And I see that in society. I see that in our kids. Just everyday life. To me, everybody needs to make decisions, and they need to make informed decisions, and that only comes from knowledge.
Yeah, you're empowering them is what
100%.
you're doing. So here's the other thing I really like about you, Sam. So in kind of us doing a little bit of research on you, we know that you're really a family guy. You talk about health being number 1, family number 2, money number 3. And, health is big in your life. I know that that's a big thing for you. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. But before we do, you have a really strong marriage and you do a lot with your wife. And how long have you been married?
So 2011, so it would be 14 years this year.
All right, right on. So I know before we started here, you said that the only reason you're down in this area is your wife had an event she was going to, and you're like, hey, she's going to be here. I'm going to be here with her. I wouldn't do it without her. So it gives you more time to spend together and so forth. And coming from somebody, I've been married for 31 years. And, you do have to make your wife a priority, because when you are done raising your kids, the job of raising your kids, the corporation of raising your kids is over, and the kids are grown and you've done a good job and they're out of the house, who's left? It's you and your wife.
That's right.
And so if you don't continue to date your wife, you don't continue to enjoy the time together and do things together and stay on the same path, you're going to end up in divorce. And you're going to be miserable through that period of time. It's not even the divorce that's really the tough thing, or, starting again and meeting somebody new and, enjoying the second phase of your life. And a lot of people do that and they do it successfully. But it's that period of time where you stop enjoying each other and you're raising kids and it's a job, that you are just wasting those valuable years of your own life, and just to come out of that and start over. And so this whole concept, and that I know you practice, is a real lesson that people should learn. You can't stop. Your wife has to be your number one focus. Yes, your kids are important to you. Yes, absolutely. You should do everything possible to enhance their lives, make it better than your own. But if you're not continuing to date your wife, you will not be successful once the kids are gone.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I even tell my kids that I chose your mother. I didn't choose you guys, right? So it's so they fully understand that, and it's true, right? I mean, the reasons why we got together initially are still the reasons why we're still together.
Yeah.
It's been amazing. Every so often we have to remind ourselves of, we sometimes start, going our separate ways, not necessarily in a bad way, but life gets busy, career, kids, and all that, right? Just got to come back together, right?
Yeah.
It's been amazing to see our growth, kind of taking a step back. It's just been incredible, and a lot of people do, and I don't want to say, I don't necessarily want to call it an excuse, which I actually hate that word, but prioritizing other things over your marriage is super easy to do, and it's one of those things that, and my wife and I keep reminding ourselves, is that we cannot deprioritize our relationship just because it's so easy to do, right?
It's so easy, especially with kids. You have two kids.
Two boys.
10 and 12, right?
10 and 6 now.
Oh, 10 and 6. Sorry, I got that wrong. Okay, so 10 and 6. But either way, they have busy lives, and you guys
100%.
Become these logistical engineers, right?
right.
Are you picking them up? Am I picking them up?
Yeah.
Who's getting from school? Where are you going? What about the homework? And
That's
all these things, and all at the end of the day, you're like,
that's
right. all you're doing.
So some of the things that we've actually done is not only, again, as part of our what kind of life do we want to live, is taking trips together.
Yeah.
Whether it's with or without kids, just constantly being able to. One of the reasons I don't have an office is I want to be able to get away and not feel bad that I'm paying rent somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Always on the road, with or without kids, with or without, obviously most of the time with my wife. We have weekly meetings that we talk about the following week, logistically. We have another meeting that we talk about our finances. This is every single week. Again, the dating thing, it's got to make that time.
Yep.
100% need to make that time, whether it's a specific day of the week or just even
spontaneous.
100%.
Yeah.
It just needs to happen. But those conversations. What's actually been added to it now is that we take daily walks together. That hour, between hour and a half walk that we take together, fresh air, the conversations go deep.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to a point where it's just refreshing to be able to kind of get into some of those details in depth, just because having kids around, having the careers, the phone calls coming through, you're not able to sit down and talk. Whereas on these walks, it's just been, whether it's the fresh air, whether it's the company, whether it's the no distractions, it just helps us go deep. It helps us talk about things we don't talk about and come up with solutions that we've never even thought about.
Yeah, I know it well. We do the same thing, weather permitting, and it gets pretty hot
incredible.
down here sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I know it well. It's also great that you're able to combine a little bit of health with that, because you're walking, and walking's great. I talk about this all the time. So tell me, when you're doing these walks, are these strolls, or are you getting your heart rate up a little bit?
Oh man, depends on the day. It's interesting. So we live at kind of top of the hill. You kind of see like coming in through here. We live at the top of the hill, so going downhill is fine. And then, so my wife, she starts off super fast.
Okay.
And what happens is, as time goes on, and I'm waking up in the morning, and as the conversations get deeper, and I get more energized, and just like, and then I end up just being the faster one, and then coming back up the hill. That's where I thrive. I'm just flying up the hill, and she tries to stay in touch or keep up with me, but yeah, they are a more brisk walk. They're not strolls, just because we also want to make it to a certain point and back, and it's we give ourselves an hour and a half.
That's
and
great.
That's kind of how we
you're combining health with a relationship.
100%.
So you're up in the Bay Area still. You moved down from Canada to the Bay Area. You remained in the Bay Area. We talked a little bit about this before the cameras came on, that you work from home, because most people, they pick up, they leave early in the morning, they go into the city, and it's kind of that's the rat race, and you didn't want to do that. But you're also up in this area, your Bay Area, which is near Silicon Valley. It's near big tech and all these things. Prices are ridiculous. I mean, perspective for everybody today, we'll put a bookmark in it, is like, if you want a 1,000 square foot home was built in the early 1900s, 1930, 1940, and it's still not completely fixed up or remodeled, you might be paying $1.5 million for that. And then it goes up from there, obviously. And so, very expensive. Gas is more expensive. Everything's more expensive in the Bay Area. So you remain there. So I'd like to know, the motivation behind doing that. And then also, it seems to be very politically charged up there. You got city issues, you got homeless, you've got, crime, you've got stores that just get broken into all the time, and big chain stores that have closed down and just shut and they're like, I'm done with this. CVS is closing down, and it just makes it more difficult. And now I know you're not in the city proper. You're might not personally be dealing with that, but I'm wondering how you frame all that in your life, in your planning, where you're like, hey, this is a place we want to stay, or do you take all of that and you say, maybe we move from here eventually?
Yeah, we've had many conversations about this, my wife and I, and it's just something we haven't been able to sit down and quantify and qualify to say, yes, we're ready to leave, whether it's the Bay Area or California for that matter, right? I mean, it's seemingly, we took a trip to Austin in 2021, and my general thinking was, the simple math was the money that we're going to save on not paying income tax, we're going to be able to buy another house in, not even sell our home and buy another house in Texas, right? So that was the mentality going in. It just didn't feel like home. And, we're for good or bad, I mean, like you said, we pay a lot of money for real estate, living up in the Bay Area, right? We just haven't found anywhere else except for down here. I will say, my wife and I, we do like pockets down here in SoCal, which is, if we were to ever move anywhere, it would be down here. So I don't know if it's, from what you were telling me, what you were saying between the good and the bad, it wouldn't be that much better, but it would be as far as kind of being closer to what we like.
Yeah.
Right. And what I will say, so we are exposed to both sides, the good and the bad, and kind of frame it out a little differently in that when I moved to the Bay Area, we kind of bounced around a little bit and ended up buying a home where we bought this house. And over time, and as we had kids, I don't know if you went through the same thing, is I've noticed different interactions and with different parents, and that really opened up my eyes.
Yeah.
And as we moved from one city to the next, and one of the reasons why we moved was because of being able to interact with different types of people.
Yeah.
So I think where we landed now, the city that we're in, the community as well as the people that go to our kids' schools and our neighbors and things like that, we are so much more aligned with who they are and how they operate than we've ever been with everybody else. We were immigrants in Canada, and also I would even say we're two-time immigrants because we also immigrated to the U.S. And that was the mentality that we had, and we were gravitating towards that until recent, meaning we wanted our kids to be around similar types of communities where, the values are amazing, the family, oriented and so on and so forth, right? But what we were missing was the other side of, how do we want our mindsets to operate? Do we want to be with folks that are, again, on that track of, I'm going to work until I'm 65, 70 years old at a corporation? Mind you, these are high income earners in the Bay Area, in the tech world, the Facebooks, Googles, and all that stuff. Or do we want to be more in line with investors, business owners, and entrepreneurs?
Mm-hmm.
That's where we ended up going, is towards those types of communities where, in our neighborhood, I don't know many people who have jobs, right?
Okay.
I mean, they're more so of like professional, entrepreneurs, business owners, and investors, where we align with those folks a lot more. So I feel like we've kind of found a good mix of, yes, we live in the Bay Area. It sucks being in the city at times, and like you always have to look over your shoulder, whether you're gonna get jumped or you know what I mean. Whereas like where we actually live is, all right, we're good. We're in this little pocket where we found what we wanted and what we were looking for. Obviously, like for my wife still has to be in California. Her practice is here. She's licensed in California. It kind of adds additional challenges, but we just haven't found. Even down here, like Newport Beach area is one of the areas that we would move to, but it's just like we just haven't found that pocket. And if we were to ever move, it has to be like, all right, this is it. We're not just bouncing around anymore. And luckily we're in a good position to be able to be where we are and like not worry too much about some of the other stuff. So
yeah, look, the whole city thing, and you're outside the city, so you don't deal with it every day. But when you do go in, it's not uncommon to find very similar attributes, even in downtown San Diego. Like the homeless problem is extraordinary. That leads to crime. But even just walking the streets, there's, it's been probably 4 years since I've been up to San Francisco. But the last time I was there, it smelled like you could smell the piss on the street. But it's the same thing in downtown San Diego. You walk and you'll see the homeless, and it's really the saddest thing, because you're like, what? Why does it have to be this way? We pay so much in taxes, and we have this incredible landscape here to be able to provide. Most of these people, frankly, they're veterans. They're people that have mental disorders. They can't provide for themselves, and those that are short term, we should be rehabilitating them and getting them back into society. And those that can't, we should be taking care of them, and stop spending money on all these things that just don't move the needle for anybody. It's the human thing to do, and hopefully we see some changes soon. We'll see what happens, but it's tough being a native Southern California, growing up here, loving it, traveling so many places, in and outside the country, across the country. My wife and I will always travel, through the lens of, could we work here? Could we live here? With similar kind of things as you, going to Texas and going, did we, Tennessee, other places just across the country. And there's always like a draw to just be where the weather is fantastic.
Yep.
You don't have to deal with big bugs.
Yeah, that's right.
But there's just there's so many things when you're doing that Ben Franklin scale.
Yeah.
And you're like, what's good and what's bad? The bad seems to be adding up a lot, but the weight of those things that are good are heavy. And so it really is a tough thing. Taxes are tough, the whole thing here. But I certainly get where you're coming from. That you've found that pocket. You've got your people. You've got your neighbors. You guys think alike. You're aligned. Yep. And if you're going to make a move, you got to feel the same way.
Yeah, I will say on the note of helping others in I do think government has a big part in it for sure. What I do take on is what I can control, right? I mean, some of the things I cannot control, obviously, some of the things we can control is by way of voting and things like that, right? Some of the things that we directly can control, and I take this as a business owner, especially in our space, and I'm seeing it more and more in that I am here to serve my community. I am here to be able to give those second chances, right? And I take that seriously in that am I doing enough of that to be able to turn this thing around? Just because that top-down approach of the government shall step in and fix everything for us doesn't work for me. And I mean that both locally as well as federally, is to me as a taxpayer, as an individual, as a business owner, I can do things to kind of steer the ship in the right direction, however small that may be. And
this problem is just so much bigger than
100%.
that. The government has to do it. It's just the scale of it
Absolutely.
here is just extraordinary. Kind of drilling down just for a moment into kind of the voting thing and the political stuff. What are your thoughts on what appears to be the beginning of Grant Cardone running for governor?
Oh, I have not been following that at all, but I would give it some serious thought. I really would, just because I feel like having someone that understands money. I'll start there. Understands money and the way to make things better from a standpoint of spend money in the right ways, and that will help the situation, as opposed to spend money on things that people want is not the right approach, in my opinion. Is what's good for our society as a whole, and not what's good for this particular group or for this particular town or whatever the case is. In my mind, it's like, what do we stand for as a state, as a country? What do we stand for? And let's spend our money and energy wisely towards that goal. And I feel like we've gotten so far away from our identity that I'm hoping that somebody else comes in and fixes that, whether it's Grant or otherwise.
Yeah, that is the problem with politicians, is the constituents have a big influence over what they do if they're outspoken. But the most outspoken are the ones that want attention in what the majority doesn't see or need the attention. And so to be strong and be able to be forward-looking, and they've got to have a real conviction. And your most successful politicians, if you're to take back and just look at history, they're the ones that had a moral compass, a real focus on the future, and didn't follow kind of the majority of the outspoken to make decisions. But there's too few of those people. So it'll be very interesting what happens here. If Grant actually throws his hat in the ring, it certainly feels like he is. He's on he's on
sounds like it.
It does seem like that.
Yeah.
He's holding some, rallies and so forth. That is kind of the beginning stages.
I would be open to hearing that side. I mean, it'll be great.
And what about Doge? What are your thoughts on Doge?
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell. I like the idea. I do like the folks that are running it. Again, it just kind of aligns with what I think is needed, but I'd like to see the results.
The wasteful spending from the government is extraordinary. Yeah. And I've been in the rooms where friends have had businesses that do government contracts, and I see the line items and what gets approved. For example, a toilet, like just a basic toilet that you would buy down at Home Depot that might be, $130 now or something of that nature, might be a line item of $6,500.
That's crazy.
And it's extraordinary, the waste. It's funny. TikTok, we'll see if it sticks around. But I've followed some of these guys that are now following Doge and the cuts, and they will read off the cuts for the day and what they're no longer spending money on.
Yeah.
And the government programs that are out there for crazy things. I mean, it's like one of them was I got to try and remember a study on making sure that football huddles are the most effective circle, things of that nature. And you're thinking like, no, this is just BS or whatever.
Right.
No, like
that's right.
Seriously, these crazy things that are spending millions and millions of dollars because somebody applies for something, they get the grant.
That's right.
Nobody's thinking behind it. So, my hope is that this Department of Government Efficiency can cut so much waste that they can stop grabbing our income to fund the BS.
That's right.
Like, we are working, half of our income is working for the government deciding how to spend it. I don't want them to decide how to spend my money. Yes, I think that we should keep our roads up. We need to make sure that we've got, emergency hospital services and, and other things that really the government is the only one that can provide. But that's the basics. There's no way I want them deciding how to spend my money outside the country to fund a foreign country or fund a war or what. Like, let's cut this stuff back. So I do like the direction that we're going. I think we're 2 years away from seeing the results of that. But it's absolutely necessary. And in my lifetime, I have never seen an administration put such emphasis on cutting waste as we have today, which is super refreshing.
Yeah, that's great. I will say two things on that. One is what's refreshing is that we're talking about it. Yeah. It's coming to light. That's true. And we're talking about it. We're having a conversation, and I'm hoping it stays as a civil conversation and productive one, where we can actually get somewhere, and we can all agree that even if it's not 100% of these spendings, right? Maybe 50%, maybe 80%. That a good part of it, that we can all agree that it's wasteful. You and I think it's wasteful, right? I mean, others might think, but I think if we can get to a point where, generally speaking, we know that, all right, fine, we've gone too far, I think that's the point we need to get to. And
I think that's a really good point. And it doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you sit on.
Absolutely.
There's probably, as you mentioned, 60 to 80% that we go, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. We really shouldn't do that. But the conversation has to be there. And without the conversation, all the loathe and the hate, it's never going to happen. Then we never get anywhere. So I'm with you. I think right now the conversation is there, and we brought light to it, and that's the first step. And 100%. So we'll see how this thing unfolds.
Yeah. And also the second one is folks like yourself, and and I feel like the podcasts and the media outside of our the network televisions, right? I mean, those are the ones that we got to keep up and keep reiterating the same message, is that the voices have gotten different, meaning the fact that we have this platform to be able to go on and spread the message, I think is huge. However
critical.
Small or big it is, we got to continue to do that.
Awesome. So. Well, Sam, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, if they're interested in being involved with some of the syndications that you're involved in, want to learn a little bit about that, or maybe they have a business and that business aligns with home services, that they're in your bucket where they're $1 million or so of gross revenue, how can they reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to give out my personal cell phone number. That probably not a good idea, but I will say that the best one is email sam@aftocapital.com, and you can reach me on social, LinkedIn and Instagram are probably the best.
Awesome. And guys, just so you know, Afto is A as in Apple, F as in Frank, T as in Tom, and O as an ostrich.
That's correct.
So, and I don't know if there's any right call note signs or whatever, but I always make them up as I go. I never use the same ones. All right, awesome. So thanks, Sam, for joining us today. Another edition of The Blueprint. And if we have brought you some value, if you got something out of this, if you've enjoyed the conversation, if you got one good takeaway, do me a favor, like, subscribe, follow, share. Really appreciate that. That helps the podcast out, helps us to grow, helps us to get the word out. And we'll see you next time on The Blueprint.